new non-revenue license placed for members of the judiciary, the legislature, state-owned enterprises, and the security sector. Government of Liberia rubbiches Nemo Partners' latest report about the government's failure to achieve above 10% of its promises says the report lacks merit, and away from whom the United Nations has condemned the recent arrest of lawyers and journalists in Indonesia. Details of these, the news bulletin, and the actual voices of the news makers are all coming up next after this very short break. Thanks for joining us. Up next is the full bulletin of news with Jara Morris. Good evening, Jara.
Good evening, Stephen. Good evening, Liberia. Government of Liberia has sent a high-level delegation to the former Butu refugee camp in Gomao district, central region in Ghana. The government's delegation trip, according to a foreign ministry release Friday, is to begin the voluntary repatriation of the first group of 700 Liberians affected by a recent demolition exercise in Ghana. It can be recalled that in February of this year, the Goma District Traditional Council in Ghana demolished 150 acres of land that had hosted the Butuburan refugee settlement since the Liberian Civil War, noting that Liberians had been illegally occupying the land. Meanwhile, President Bouaka since then established and mandated an interagency working group led by Councillor Jedid Aman, Deputy Minister for Legal Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, along with the Liberia Refugee Repatriation and Resettlement Commission. The release further that while in Ghana, the delegation will arrange all necessary logistics, including securing safe passage from Ghana to Liberia via Cote d'Ivoire to ensure the safe return of repatriates and their belongings. The Ministry of Transport has unveiled new non-revenue license plates assigned to members of the judiciary, the legislature, state-owned enterprises, and the security sector. The ceremony, which was held on Friday, May 17, at the Ministry of Transport, brought together security apparatus and employees of the Ministry of Transport. Addressing the gathering, Transport Minister Salif Raf Chada said the decommissioning of the non-revenue license plate is aimed at signifying the categories of plates being used by members of the legislature, the judiciary, and the Liberia National Police, among others. He at the same time disclosed that the nationwide distribution of the new license plates will be done by the General Services Agency in the coming weeks. For his part, Deputy Director for Operation at the General Services Agency and member of the Assets Recovery Task Force, Robert Wilson, lauded the Ministry of Transport for the initiative and at the same time warned individuals who he said deprived the government of revenue generation to disengage, noting that it poses a serious threat to the country's economy. Also speaking, a representative of the Liberia National Police pledged the LMP support and commitment to working with the Ministry of Transport to ensure that all vehicles plying the streets meet the ministry's requirements. The government of Liberia has released its 100 days deliverables reporting that report highlighting 74% progress. The report captured improvement in major sectors including health, education, good governance, security, and the rule of law. Deputy Finance Minister for Fiscal Affairs Anthony Myers told Mekat reporters on Friday that out of eight, that's 87 promises, 74% have been completed. Minister Myers indicated that the remaining 26% of President Wakai commitments are ongoing across the country. He, he also boasts major road connectivity, agriculture, and the cleaning of drainages across Monrovia and its environs. Meanwhile, the Deputy Finance Minister for Fiscal Affairs has rubbished NEMOT partner latest report about government failure to achieve above 10% out of 100% of the 100 days deliverable. A presidential candidate in the just ended 2023 elections in Liberia, Richard C. Miller, has described the Unity Party government under the leadership of President Joseph Boakai as the worst government since the inception of Liberia on the African continent. According to Richard C. Miller, the government is doing nothing to address the major pressing issues of unemployment, stability of economic, among others, noting that President Boakai government is doing nothing to unify the country. Richard C. Miller furthered that the president is not capable to do the job by running the country, adding that he has no contact outside of Liberia to bring dividends to the country. He said Liberia is retrogressing instead of progressing under the leadership of President Boakai, adding that he has worked in government for over 40 years with no idea of how to provide jobs for Liberians to move the economy forward, making roads across the country pliable, among others. He spoke in an interview Thursday from his home outside the country. The ISAR International Elections Observation Mission in Liberia has completed its findings, recommendations, and conclusions from the observation report in the just ended October 10, 2023 presidential and legislative elections and the November 10th presidential run of elections. ESA's assessment of Liberia's electoral processes highlighted both the progress made in sustaining democracy over the past 2 decades and the complexities faced in the build-up to the 2023 presidential and legislative elections. ESA said Liberia's constitutional and legal framework lays a solid foundation for credible elections, but the non-implementation of critical constitutional reforms raises concerns, especially regarding term length, gender quota, and electoral magistrates. Issa Liam underscores critical areas of concerns such as voters tracking and campaign finance regulations, emphasizing the need for clarity and enforcement, adding that the 2023 elections context was marked by challenges, including the scaling back of international support, economic difficulties, among others. The report was presented Thursday in Monrovia to stakeholders by the country director of ISAL, Liberia, Madam Antonetta Hamdishiu. The Liberia Immigration Service former Commissioner for Naturalization, Councillor Asatu Kanen, is admonishing Liberians to unite for the forward march of the country. Councillor Kanen said hate, discrimination, and ethnicity, religious intolerance must be resisted by all citizens considering Liberia's fragile peace. According to her, the only way Liberia can make progress in terms of development is for Liberians to move from fragile peace to everlasting peace. The LIS former commissioner for naturalization made the call when she served as keynote speaker at the induction ceremony of the United Methodist University Student Council in Monrovia. She called on the new officials to serve with integrity, passion and must always be willing to listen. For his part, the president of the United Methodist University Student Council, Matthew Fumba, vowed to engage the head of the university to carry out some programs. He named the modernization of the university's library, internship, student exchange programs, and sanitation, among others. And cautious workers of the Monrovia City Corporation Friday staged a protest calling on the Monrovia City Mayor to pay their 5 months' salary allegedly owed them by the management of the MCC. According to the angry protesters, the management of the city corporation has promised to pay their monies on the 15th of May, but to their utmost surprise, the management has refused to pay their monies. The protesters said they have worked tirelessly to clean the streets of Monrovia for the past 5 months, and it's that's for the 5 months without receiving a dime from the Monrovia City Corporation. They are, however, threatening that if the government, through the Monrovia City Corporation, cannot settle their 5 months' salary arrears, they will continue on their protest actions until their concerns can be met. The protesters said they are finding it difficult to feed their children, adding that the government of Liberia, through the MCC, is responsible for their children not being in school due to them not receiving the just benefits for the past 5 years. They said that they regretted voting the Unity Party led government due to the fact that Liberians wanted change, but instead, the government is creating hatred throughout the country. Well, Stephen, that's the shift of the news bullet.
We'd like to say many thanks to you, Jera Morris, for the news bulletin. It is a regular feature on Freedom News Basket. 45 minutes of major happenings about Liberia, Africa, and elsewhere. And one of the top stories we are following this evening, government of Liberia sends a high-powered delegation to Ghana to begin the voluntary repatriation of the first group of 700 Liberians affected by the demolition of the Butubura camp in Ghana. We will take a very short break. When we come back, we'll bring you the voices of the news makers. Welcome back and thanks for joining us. Let's now take our first development. The Ministry of Transport has unveiled new non-revenue lesson plates assigned to members of the judiciary, the legislature, state-owned enterprises, and the security sector. The ceremony, which was held on Friday, May 17, at the Ministry of Transport, brought together security apparatus and employees of the Ministry of Transport, among others. Addressing the gathering, Transport Minister Salif Rav Talal said that the commissioning of the non-revenue lesson plate is aimed at signifying the categories of plate being used by members of the legislature, the judiciary, and the Liberia National Police, among others.
The Ministry of Transport is unveiling for security photo. This is the new place. My good old friend, every 4 months, the Honorable EPS Director, this will be at U.S. Transport, all security apparatus. So, for our friends in the legislature, we start with the upper house with the Senate. You see, this is the new place for the Liberian Senate. Beside all of the decorations you see before the member of the 56th legislature, so we have honored them. And the committee head has similar like this, a white background like the blue now, which is not equal for the program. For the legislature, this is the youth place, the House of Representatives, and this is a secondary place, House of Representatives. For the whole series, we are members members of cabinet and service users, which is the new design. We see the inundation of guest lists in the country. We see every car out there that gets guests. So the new design with students shows that we go in a new direction. And this will be the guest list with features on it. And it's blue, national police, DSO, supplying this. For the government vehicle, they have this background. Now that we have displayed those plates to my capacity as the Minister of Transport Republic of Nigeria, this 17th day of May, with the power of SABC and decommissioning all government plates in the Republic of Nigeria as it of this color in this view.
For his part, Director for Operation at the General Services Agency, a member of the Asset Recovery Task Force, Robert Wilson, lauded the Ministry of Transport for the initiative and at the same time one individual who he said deprived the government of revenue generation to disengage.
Let me congratulate the Ministry of Transport for such great initiative. The Committee on Transport has a resident both the legislature. We want to send this caveat. There are people who love to deprive government of needed revenue. And we take some of these plates, whether a guest plate or just take any government plate and place it on the vehicles. And when you ask them, they say, oh, I'm working with government. Only government cars supposed to carry government plate. And only GSA is supposed to assign government plate. If you have a guest plate or a government plate that is on your car, remove them with immediate effect. We will not compromise for government to get a revenue. We will not compromise anybody. If you are now a guest, we will assign guest plate to the immediate people who are authorized to use the guest plate. And we give plates to those government cars that are required to carry government plate.
Also speaking, a representative of the Liberia National Police pledged the LNP's support and commitment to working with the Ministry of Transport to ensure that all vehicles plying the streets meet the ministry's requirements.
We are thankful to be a body to form part of this all-important program. As you may be aware, the Liberia National Police is the law enforcement arm of the government. And we are happy that the Ministry of Transport, that happens to be one of our major partners, that we have been collaborating, cooperating, and coordinating with, is launching this exercise today. A couple of weeks ago, the Deputy Director of Police was asked to carry me at the Ministry of at the Capitol building because there was a confrontation between a member of the House of Representatives and myself, because most of them we do not know them, or ground that the car was not lesson plated. So thankfully, this exercise has been launched today. All of their people will be lesson plated, and there will be no more need for confrontation. When I see a representative coming, the due courtesy will be given. When I see a senator coming and the car is identified, then of course the police will be able to run due courtesy. There will be no more confrontation. Mr. Minister, continue to do the good work. The police are there to collaborate and work along with you to make sure that those plates that are out there mounted on people that are not supposed to be there, I can assure you, the Public Safety Division of the Liberia National Police will work along with the Ministry of Transport to ensure that those plates are removed from those vehicles and those vehicles will be impounded until they are properly registered. Thank you very much, sir.
Representative of the Liberia National Police, earlier, you listened to the voice of Robert Wilson, the Deputy Director for Operation at the General Services Agency, as well as the voice of the Minister of Transport. The government of Liberia has released its 100 days deliverable report, highlighting 74% progress. The report captured improvement in major sectors, including health, education, and good governance, security, as well as the rule of law. Deputy Finance Minister for Fiscal Affairs, Anthony Myers, told MICAT reporters on Friday that out of the 87 promises, 74% had been completed by the government of Liberia.
This by performance standards, we can report that of the overall interventions, there were 87 interventions outlined. Of these interventions, 64 or 74% has been completed or were nearing completion. But the remaining 23 or 26% are ongoing interventions, key achievement across different sectors. The agriculture census and data collection was completed, and the National Agricultural Development was drafted and was awaiting validation. Road infrastructure, critical spots across the country are currently being aggressively worked on in anticipation of the onset of the serious rainy season. The fight against drugs and substance abuse is on course. FDA has arrested more than 200 suspected drug dealers. Education, the GOL began the payment of arrears for WASP fees and the international scholarship students as well. The cleaning of sewage lines commenced across Monrovia. The payroll audit commenced. And this payroll audit is in some way tied in the utmost administration system in leaders. Then all diplomatic passports were recalled and reissued where applicable. Then in health, 123 beneficiaries of the At-Risk Youth Program were transitioned from rehabilitation to recovery and reintegration.
Meanwhile, the Deputy Finance Minister for Fiscal Affairs rubbished NIMBO Partners' latest report about government failure to achieve above 10% out of its 100% promises.
NIMBO 16, less than 16% versus our 74%. Well, we have the data. So what does NIMBO have to show you? What did NIMBO show you? Bring them, let's compare. What did NIMBO show? We have this to show you. We share it not to do artificial infection. You can't do that. We'll give you the information. You are at liberty. Do we think it's perfect? There will be issues in it. We ourselves, we know there are issues in it. But we also will explain. We have more than 28 pages of tables to share with you. 22.2 million is the ministry's entire infrastructure budget for this year. The 100-day budget includes the Ministry of Public Works and several other institutions. Out of the 100-day budget, we only provided around 8.9 something million to the Ministry of Public Works. All right. Then on the payroll deadline, yes, we have been facing challenges. And these challenges are part of the teething problem. You know, the initial difficulties in.
That's the voice of Deputy Finance Minister for Fiscal Affairs, Anthony Myers. They're giving an update on the government's progress and at the same time rubbishing the recent report by NIMBO Partners, one of the leading COS in Liberia. Liberia Immigration Service former Commissioner for Naturalization, Councillor Asatu Bad Kanin, is admonishing Liberians to unite for the forward march of the country. Councillor Kanin said that discrimination and ethnicity related tolerance must be resisted by all citizens considering Liberia's fragile peace. According to her, the only way Liberia can make progress in terms of development is for Liberians to move from fragile peace to everlasting peace.
It is about time that we move from fragile peace to everlasting peace so that we all can change the narrative. And this can only be achieved if we all do away with those vices that brought war to Liberia. Some of those vices were transfer aggression, guilt by association, hatred, discrimination, ethnicity, religious intolerance, and power greed. These are some causes of the war we experience in Liberia. Let's say no to war and embrace peace. We can never have such opportunity like this induction program if we are experiencing war in our country. It is about time that we Liberians learn to know the importance of peace and insist that peace is retained in Liberia. The motto of People Uniting for Peace in Liberia says, and I quote, "Peace is not the silence of guns." And I truly believe this. Some of us go to bed, many nights you students go to bed, thinking how you will find the first $100 that will take you to school. Some don't even have dime to even go back home. Why some cannot even have donuts to munch on while waiting for the next class. But don't
For the part of the United Methodist University Student Council, President Martin Fombard vowed to engage head of the university to carry out some programs. He named the decentralization of the university's library internship students change programs, among others.
I think it was based on their observation from our past governing process, the way we led them when we were at the junior status. And our vision for the institution is to engage the administration through result-oriented advocacy, some of those things that they need to do, even though they know them, but we'll just be reminding them about them fulfilling it. Within the first 100 days, we would like to structure a team that will be proactive to meet the need of the student, because without a team, it is impossible for you to complete the work of the people. So we will try to structure the government within 100 days, structure the government of the entire institution, have the inauguration, and have the student back to school program, and also plan the trip, the other time trip that is normally held after every 2 semesters. So within the 100 days, that is what we have on our plate. So it is also part of our agenda to engage federal presidents to have a conglomeration of all of the university presidents meeting and discussing issues in the interest of universitarians in Liberia.
That's the voice of Matthew Fombard, the newly inducted president of the United Methodist University there speaking. Earlier, you listened to the voice of Liberia, former Liberia Immigration Service Commissioner Asatu Ba Collin there. If you are just joining the news program, this is a reminder that you are listening to the Freedom Evening News Basket, 45 minutes of major happenings about Liberia, Africa, and elsewhere. And this news presentation is proudly sponsored by Crime Stoppers Liberia. Let's now continue with more developments. Casual workers of the Monrovia City Corporation Friday staged a protest calling on the Monrovia City Mayor to pay their 5 months' salary alleged owed them by the entity. According to the protester, the management of the City Corporation has promised to pay their money on the 15th of May, but to no avail. Yeah.
We want our pay. We get our children go to school. I'm telling them not pay. If we want to watch school, now I want money. But I want to get our pay. We will not move on to the gate here and then we get our pay. We want our 5 months pay. Let's get our money. Now what pay we never want to pay our children's school fees. Now what pay we never want to do to pay our family. We want our money. We will not get our money. We will not move on to the gate. We will not open. And then our money is our account. We wouldn't want our pay. Why are they getting from people? We want our money. That's what our money we want. They can't well, no problem with them, but we wouldn't want our pay. That's all. But I can't we want our pay. we should stand to dialogue, but the dialogue is not enough. The plan to tell you that they want to pay 1,000 each.
You have your
Coach, 100% better than him. Coach, you not all you are. You want what pay. Coach, now Coach pay on time. I want 150. I was going on account. We want what money.
So how much is this money?
150. 150.
Per individual for a month. So you say. So the one thing that having well, okay. So I want to know the two different people.
They get it in-house. They get it in-house people, and they get it.
Voices of workers of the Monrovia City Corporation there, according on the institution's management to pay their that's money ordained by the institution. With more development, a presidential candidate in the just ended 2023 elections in Liberia, Richie Say Mayer, has described the Unity Party government under the leadership of President Joseph Boakai as the worst government since the inception of Liberia on the African continent. According to Richie C. Mayer, the government is doing nothing to address the major pressing issues of unemployment, instability of the economy, among other things, noting that President Joseph Boakai is doing nothing to unify the country. Richard Seabeda further that President Boakai is not capable to do the job by running the country, adding that he has no contact outside of the country.
He's doing exactly what I expected him to do, and that means nothing. Right? And I try to be fair. Part of the reason why it was right after the election, I wanted to just give him the chance to see, let the 100 days come and see, or during the 100 days to see actually what he wants to do. So I didn't say anything. I've been going about, the 100 days are going by, and it's basically nothing. Nothing is happening. And what I mean by that is, our country right now, we're still dealing with unemployment, inflation. People are not, there's no jobs. So, right now, to me, this president here, with all due respect, he is not capable to do this job. It's not like people like myself who are business people that have contact inside of and outside of Liberia. The man, 30 years, the international community don't know him. He never worked outside of Liberia. So to me, when you're dealing with somebody who was dealing with the government for 40 years, 12 years as a vice president, then another 6 years was waiting around to run for the presidency again. So it's not fair because he should be able to run the country right now, especially when it comes to jobs, the economy, the inflation. Policies are going to be able to move our country forward. There are some things that you can do right when it comes to, let's say, roads, road construction. Those are things that you can put in place, and then over time, you'll see the results. But right now, for the number of years he's been in the government, it's not fair. Well, you know why it's not early? When you are vice president for 12 years. Do you know the reason why Eric Johnson got so much, almost 20 billion in foreign investment into our country? Because the people were aware of her. She was connected to people in and outside of Liberia.
Former presidential candidate in the just ended 2023 elections in Liberia, Richard Say, made there descending on the Boakai government. Well, we now take a very short break and take words from our sponsor, Crime Stoppers Liberia. When we come back, we bring you more developments.
Hello. I want to talk about violence. More violence is indiscriminate. It can happen for any reason and to anyone. Until we do something to stop the surge of vigilante-style justice in this country, none of us will be safe. My Liberia is Liberia of hope. In my Liberia, it is possible. Violence is not part of my Liberia. Violence leads to property damage, injury, or even death, as we are seeing recent months in several parts of Liberia, including Monrovia. Talk to people in your community about violence. Stand up against mob justice. Be a community hero. Liberia is all that we have. We must all unite to uphold the rule of law. Thanks for listening. This is Old Man Sam Simon.
It's about music. There are crowds in many places, in every community,
A message there from our sponsor, Crown Stop of Liberia, with the late campaign Omen Sims Sunday speaking to Liberians. Now, ahead of the news is our foreign development, and this development sets the pace of the foreign development. The ESAD International Election Observation Mission in Liberia has completed its findings, recommendation, and conclusion from the observation report in the just ended October 10, 2023 presidential and legislative elections and the November 10 presidential runoff election, respectively. ESAD's assessment of Liberia's electoral process highlighted both the progress made in sustaining democracy over the past 2 decades and the complexity faced in the build-up to the 2023 presidential and legislative election. Here is a representative of ESA speaking.
We are going to present to you a report of what we saw, what we analyzed, what we heard from the different political stakeholders. And experiences and perspectives and analysis differ. What we are presenting to you respectfully and humbly is what we witnessed, what we observed. And our recommendations are coming from what we saw, are coming from what we heard, are coming from what we cross-examined as well. ESA's assessment of Liberia's electoral process highlights both the progress made in sustaining democracy over the past 2 decades and the complexities faced in the lead up to 2023 presidential and legislative elections. Liberia's constitutional and legal framework lays a solid foundation for credible elections, but the non-implementation of critical constitutional reforms raises concerns, especially regarding the term length, gender quotas, and electoral magistrate rotation. These are areas of weakness that we think that for future elections, Liberia should pay attention to. The 2023 elections also took place without revisions to the delimitation and boundaries of constituencies based on updated census information. The 2023 elections, ladies and gentlemen, was marked by challenges, including the scaling back of the international support. As you know, we didn't have UNIMIL here. Also, it was characterized by economic difficulties, obviously due to COVID-19 and the
A representative of ESA there speaking, and she's taking a back to Jera Morris. They stand for the foreign development.
The UN has denounced the recent arrest of lawyers and journalists in Tunisia, saying they undermined the rule of law. It said reported raids on the country's bar association violate the independence of lawyers and constitute forms of intimidation and harassment. The Tunisian president Kais Saied has been accused of mounting a power grip since seizing sweeping powers in 2021. Under a law he ratified 2 years ago, more than 60 lawyers, journalists, and opposition figures are reported to have been arrested for spreading what is described as false news, Critics says the law is being used to stir-fry dissent. That's the shift of the foreign development.
Say many thanks to you, Jara Morris, and he's taking us home on this weekend edition of the news program. But before we take leave of you, here are top stories we closely follow this evening. Government of Liberia sends a high-level delegation to Ghana to begin the voluntary repatriation of the first 700 Liberians affected by the demolition of the Butuburak camp in Ghana. Ministry of Transport unveils new non-revenue lesson plates for members of the judiciary, the legislature, state-owned enterprises, and the security sectors. Government of Liberia rubbish neighbor partners' latest report about the government's failure to achieve above 10% of its promises, says the report like merits. And away from home, the United Nations has condemned the recent arrest of lawyers and journalists in Indonesia. On this note, we'd like to say many thanks to our news writers, editors, and correspondents for making this weekend edition of the news program a success. Gerard Morris were here with the news bulletin, inclusive of the foreign development. Marlon Gracie, Sada Control, and ably coordinated the sound. And I'm Stephen Compton. Thanks for listening and watching.